I was supposed to be at the hardware store. That's the smallest, most insignificant detail, yet it's the one that ended my engagement. I had already driven halfway there when I realized my wallet was still on the kitchen counter. I remember sighing, tapping the steering wheel once in mild annoyance, and making a U-turn. Nothing dramatic, just one of those tiny disruptions that feel inconvenient in the moment and inevitable in hindsight. The apartment was quieter than usual when I came back. Too quiet for a Saturday afternoon when wedding planning was supposedly in full swing. My fiancé's best friend's car was still parked outside, which made sense. They'd planned to spend the afternoon finalizing seating charts, debating flower arrangements, arguing over fonts on the invitations. Normal things, happy things. I unlocked the door softly, already rehearsing an apology in my head for interrupting. That's when I heard my name. Not spoken, dismissed. I mean, I do love her, my fiancé said, his voice drifting from the living room. Casual, light, like he was talking about a sweater he'd outgrown. She's stable. She treats me well. Her family adores me. There was a pause. A long one. But I'm not attracted to her anymore. Like, at all. I haven't been for months. My hand froze on the door frame. My breath caught halfway in. I'm just waiting for the right time to leave, he continued. After the holidays, maybe. Or after I get the promotion. Her dad's firm already wrote me that recommendation letter, so I'm set there. Her friend laughed softly. You're still planning the wedding, though. I know, my fiancé laughed back. Breaking off an engagement is such a hassle. Deposits, plane tickets, all of it. Plus, I've got 3 interviews lined up from her family's connections. I just need to time this right. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Does she know? Her friend asked. Please, he said. She's completely clueless. Still brings me coffee every morning like a lost puppy. It's honestly kind of pathetic. They laughed. Both of them. That was the moment something inside me went very still. I stepped fully into the room. The right time, I realized, was now. 5 years. That was the number that kept looping in my head after I stood frozen in the doorway, listening to my fiancé plan his exit like a business transaction. 5 years wasn't just time. It was habits, routines, shared mornings and quiet nights that stacked on top of each other until they felt permanent. We met when I was 27 at a friend's engagement party I almost didn't attend. I remember thinking he looked out of place in his pressed shirt, uncomfortable around small talk, holding his drink like it was a prop. When our mutual friend introduced us, he smiled politely, asked thoughtful questions, and actually listened to my answers. That alone felt rare. Our early relationship was slow in the best way. No chaos, no dramatic declarations, just consistency. He remembered how I took my coffee. He texted when he said he would. When my car broke down on the side of the road one night, he showed up without complaining, without turning it into a favor I'd owe him later. Stability felt like love back then. His family welcomed me quickly. Too quickly, maybe. Sunday dinners turned into holidays. Holidays into family vacations. His parents spoke about my future like it was already decided. When you two get married, when you move closer, when you start building something real. I didn't push back. I liked being wanted. I liked belonging. When he proposed, it wasn't flashy. No crowd, no cameras. Just a quiet evening, his hands shaking slightly as he held out the ring. He said he couldn't imagine his life without me. I believed him because I couldn't imagine mine without him either. Planning the wedding felt less romantic and more logistical, but that didn't worry me. I told myself that was normal. That long-term love was about partnership, not fireworks. When he seemed distant some days, I blamed stress, work, pressure, the weight of adulthood settling in. I made excuses for him easily. I didn't notice, or maybe I didn't want to notice, how the affection changed. The way he stopped reaching for me absent-mindedly. How date nights became errands. How physical closeness turned into something scheduled, then postponed, then quietly avoided. When his career stalled, my family stepped in. My dad wrote recommendation letters. Old colleagues offered introductions. Doors opened that hadn't been opened before. He thanked me. He thanked my parents. He promised things would calm down once he felt more secure. I thought I was supporting the man I loved. I didn't realize I was becoming infrastructure. Looking back, the signs were there. The way he talked about our future like a checklist. The way wedding conversations felt like obligations instead of excitement. The way he smiled for photos but exhaled afterward, like performing cost him something. But 5 years teaches you how to normalize discomfort. It teaches you to confuse effort with love. So I kept bringing him coffee every morning, kept asking how his day went, kept believing that loyalty would eventually be rewarded with honesty. Standing in that hallway, listening to him describe me as stable, useful, and pathetic, all in the same breath, I finally understood something I'd been avoiding for months. I wasn't his partner anymore. I was his safety net. And safety nets, I learned, are only appreciated until someone decides they don't need them anymore. The truth is, what I overheard that afternoon didn't come out of nowhere. It only felt sudden because I'd spent months convincing myself not to look too closely. There had been a quiet shift long before that day, subtle enough to dismiss, persistent enough to unsettle me if I allowed myself to sit with it. He stopped touching me without thinking. Not dramatically, just small things. His hand no longer found the small of my back in crowded rooms. He pulled away first when we hugged. Kisses became quick, functional, like punctuation at the end of a sentence he'd already moved past. I noticed. I told myself not to. When I brought it up gently one night, he laughed it off, said he was tired, said work had been draining, said wedding planning made everything feel clinical. I nodded, even though my chest tightened at the word clinical. Love wasn't supposed to feel like something to manage. Date nights turned into shared errands. Conversations drifted toward logistics, budgets, timelines, guest lists, anything that didn't require emotional presence. When I tried to talk about us, he'd reassure me quickly, efficiently, like he was closing a ticket. Don't overthink it, he'd say. We're good. So I stopped asking questions that made him uncomfortable. The physical distance was harder to ignore. He always had a reason. Early meetings, stress headaches, exhaustion. I learned to stop initiating. Learned how to roll over quietly without making it obvious I'd been rejected. Learned how to pretend it didn't matter. But my body knew, and so did my instincts, no matter how hard I tried to silence them. What hurt most wasn't the lack of desire. It was the absence of curiosity. He didn't ask how I was anymore. Not really. Not in the way that invited honesty. His attention drifted elsewhere, often to his phone, to his future, to the life he was quietly building with help from my family. I watched him become more confident as his interviews lined up, more relaxed as opportunities appeared. He started talking about his plans with an ease that didn't include me the way it used to. Still, I stayed, because 5 years teaches you how to compromise with your own discomfort. Because I loved him. Because walking away felt heavier than waiting. There were moments, small, sharp ones, that should have stopped me cold. The way he corrected me in front of friends. The way he joked about how easy I was, how I never caused drama. The way compliments started sounding less like appreciation and more like justification for keeping me around. I remember once, at a family dinner, my dad asked him how the job search was going. He smiled, confident, thanked him for the support, talked about his upcoming interviews. Everyone clapped him on the back. I caught his eye across the table. He didn't look proud. He looked relieved. That should have been my warning. But I was still bringing him coffee every morning, still adjusting my schedule around his moods, still believing that commitment meant patience, even when patience was costing me my sense of self. I thought love meant holding on. I didn't realize I was holding space for someone who was already halfway gone. By the time I stood in that hallway, listening to him outline his exit strategy out loud, I finally understood what all those small moments had been preparing me for. The betrayal hadn't started that afternoon. That afternoon just confirmed it. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cough or clear my throat or make any sound at all. For a few seconds after the laughter faded, I just stood there, half hidden by the wall, heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. My fingers curled against the door frame, nails pressing into the wood like I needed something solid to keep me upright. Then I stepped forward. The floor creaked beneath my foot. Both of them jumped. My fiancé turned first. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost surreal. Like someone had reached inside him and flipped a switch. His eyes widened, mouth opening on instinct. Hey, babe, he said quickly. I thought you were... The right time is now. The words came out of my mouth steady, too steady. They surprised even me. Silence swallowed the room. His friend suddenly became very interested in her phone, thumbs moving too fast, eyes refusing to meet anyone's gaze. My fiancé stood up slowly, as if standing too quickly might make the moment real. How much did you hear? He asked. All of it. My voice shook then, just slightly. I didn't bother hiding it. The part where you're not attracted to me. The part where you're using my family's connections. The part where I'm pathetic and clueless. I took a breath. Does that cover everything? His friend grabbed her bag. I should... Yeah, I said, cutting in. You should. She didn't argue. She was gone in seconds, the door clicking shut behind her like punctuation. My fiancé reached for my arm. Wait, please, let's talk privately, not in front of her. I looked down at his hand wrapped around my wrist, the same hand that had slipped away from mine so many nights before. Why? I asked quietly. You had no problem calling me pathetic in front of her 2 minutes ago. He dropped his hand like he'd been burned. I didn't mean it like that, he said quickly. I was venting. Everyone vents to their friends. For months? I asked. While planning your exit strategy and milking my family's connections? His face crumpled. Tears came fast. Too fast. You're twisting my words, he said. That's not what I meant. Really? I asked. What context makes I'm not attracted to her anymore and she's pathetic sound better? Silence. He tried to hug me. I stepped back. Please, he said, crying harder now. I made a mistake. I was stressed about the wedding. I said stupid things. Don't throw away 5 years over this. You already threw it away, I said. I'm just the one saying it out loud. No, he insisted. We can fix this. Therapy, whatever you want. I shook my head. I want someone who's actually attracted to me, I said. Someone who isn't using me as a career stepping stone. That's not you. Something hardened in his expression, just for a second, before the tears returned. I walked into the bedroom and pulled out a bag, threw clothes into it without folding, without ceremony. He followed me, hovering, alternating between sobbing and explaining how I was taking everything out of context. By the time I zipped the bag, my hands were shaking. I didn't look back as I walked out. That night, my phone lit up 17 times. I didn't answer once. My brother didn't ask questions when I showed up at his place that night. He just opened the door, took one look at my face, and stepped aside. No commentary, no pressure, just space. I dropped my bag by the couch and stood there for a second too long, like my body hadn't caught up with what I'd just done. Ending an engagement isn't loud at first. It's quiet, hollow. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, his voice replayed in my head, not attracted to her anymore. Waiting for the right time. Pathetic. Each phrase landed differently now, stripped of context, stripped of excuses. I kept wondering how long he'd been practicing those words, how often he'd said them before he finally said them out loud where I could hear. My phone stayed face down on the table. 17 missed calls. I didn't need to see the notifications to know what they were. Apologies, explanations, panic, control disguised as concern. I wasn't ready to hear any of it. The next few days blurred together. I went back to work like nothing had happened, smiled through meetings, answered emails about deadlines that suddenly felt meaningless. I told myself I'd deal with everything later, after my body stopped shaking, after my chest stopped feeling tight every time my phone buzzed. When I finally went back to the apartment to grab more clothes, I didn't go alone. He was there, not by himself. His mother and sister were seated in the living room like they were waiting for a performance. Honey, his mom said immediately, standing up. Let's all sit down and talk about this like adults. There's nothing to discuss, I said, keeping my voice level. His sister crossed her arms. You're seriously throwing away 5 years because he had one private conversation with his friend? One private conversation, I repeated, where he admitted he's not attracted to me, is using my family for job connections, and is planning to leave me once it's convenient. She scoffed. Yeah, pretty much. My fiancé looked wrecked. Red eyes, sleepless skin. He stood slowly, like sudden movements might scare me away. Please, he said. I've thought about nothing else. I was wrong. So wrong. I do love you. I am attracted to you. I was just having wedding jitters and expressed it horribly. His mom nodded eagerly. Wedding stress is completely normal. I almost left his father twice before our wedding. I met her gaze. Did you tell your friends he was pathetic and that you were using him for his family's connections? The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. His sister tried again. People say things they don't mean when they're stressed. He wasn't stressed about the wedding, I said. He was planning when to dump me after maximizing the benefits of staying engaged. That's not true, my fiancé said quickly. I swear, I wasn't planning anything. I was spiraling, intrusive thoughts. Your exact words were, I'm waiting for the right time to leave, I said. That's not an intrusive thought. That's a plan. His mom's face hardened. You're being incredibly cruel right now. I nodded slowly. To someone who was using me? Yes. His sister stood up. You know what? Maybe he dodged a bullet. You're obviously not mature enough for marriage if you can't handle complicated feelings. Complicated feelings like laughing while calling me pathetic? My fiancé started sobbing louder. Stop, please, you're making it worse. But his mother wasn't done. You'll regret this, she said sharply. He's handsome, successful, from a good family. You think you'll find better? I'll find honest, I said. That's better. I grabbed my things. As I reached the door, my fiancé blocked my path. Can we please talk? Just 5 minutes. Just us. His mom leaned in and whispered loudly enough for me to hear. Don't beg her, honey. She's not worth it. Something in my fiancé's face shifted when they left. The tears stopped. Calculation replaced them. And that was when I knew, whatever pain I was feeling, walking away was still the right choice. Once his mother and sister left, the apartment felt different. Not quieter. Exposed. My fiancé stood there, arms crossed loosely, head tilted, as if reassessing a negotiation that had gone off script. The tears were gone now. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, measured. Okay, he said, let's be realistic. That word, realistic, landed wrong. 5 years together, he continued. We have a life built, shared friends, a shared apartment, combined everything. You really want to blow that up over one bad conversation? Yes. The answer came easily. That surprised him. What about the wedding deposits? He asked. We'll lose almost $30,000. Better than losing a lifetime, I said, with someone who's counting down the days until he leaves me. I am attracted to you, he snapped suddenly. God, you're being dramatic. I had one bad day. A bad day that lasted months, I said. His expression hardened. He changed tactics again, voice softer, closer, familiar. Fine, I messed up, he said. But doesn't 5 years earn me one chance to make it right? You had months to be honest, I said. You chose to fake it. I wasn't using you. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Want to listen to a recording of what you said? His face went pale. You recorded us? No, I said. But your reaction tells me everything I need to know. He cried again. This time it felt rehearsed. You're being cruel, he said. This isn't the woman I fell in love with. And you're not the man I thought I was marrying, I said. So we're even. I left with my things that night. He texted later. Fine, you want to play games? Game on. I didn't respond. The game started fast. Within days, I started hearing versions of the story that didn't sound like mine. Apparently, I'd gotten cold feet. Panicked right before the wedding. Abandoned him without warning. Poor him. Blindsided. Heartbroken. My phone rang. My mother was crying. What happened? She asked. His parents called us. I told her everything. By the time I finished, her voice had changed. Soft to sharp. I'm calling his mother, she said. That conversation, I later learned, was nuclear. Friends started choosing sides. Some reached out quietly, asking questions. Others disappeared completely. I lost a few friendships I thought were solid. The ones who knew me didn't hesitate. They didn't need convincing. Then came the venue. The coordinator called, confused. My fiancé had told them I refused to pay my half of the cancellation fee. I paid my share immediately. Then I emailed the venue and corrected the record. He texted me minutes later. Thanks for embarrassing me. Real classy. You told them I refused to pay, I replied. I didn't. Who's embarrassing who? No response. 2 days later, his best friend, the one from the original conversation, called me. I need to tell you something, she said. He's asking me to lie for him. My stomach dropped. About what? He wants me to say you were financially controlling, that you isolated him, that you were emotionally abusive. Silence stretched between us. Are you going to? I asked. No, she said immediately. I was there. I heard what he said about you. It was messed up. Why are you telling me this? Because it's wrong, she said. And honestly, when you walked in that day, part of me was relieved. I'd been telling him for weeks to either commit or leave you alone. He kept saying he was waiting for the right moment. You gave him that moment. I thanked her. Then the smear campaign went public. Cryptic social media posts about narcissistic partners, about financial abuse, about women who can't handle strong men. Never my name, but everyone knew. His sister joined in, commenting, liking, dropping hints. I ignored it, mostly, until the landlord called. He wants you removed from the lease, he said. Claims he feels unsafe with your belongings in the apartment. Is there a police report? I asked. No. Then I'm staying on the lease, I said, and I'll keep paying my half. He wants you to pay full rent since you're not living there. That's not happening. I booked a lawyer. Expensive, worth it. We laid out options. Clear, documented. I emailed my fiancé with boundaries and CC'd the landlord. He replied immediately, "Can't believe you'd involve lawyers. So petty." My lawyer sent a letter. Any removal or destruction of my property would be illegal eviction and theft. He backed off that threat, but the tactics didn't stop. HR called me at work. An anonymous complaint. Vague allegations. Suspicious timing. My boss pulled me aside. Anything going on personally? He asked. I told him the basics. He checked logs, found nothing. Someone's trying to mess with you, he said. Document everything. Then came the lowest blow. My mother called again, angry this time. He contacted me, she said, tried to manipulate me, told me you'd changed. She shut him down. But his family doubled down. His father left a voicemail about being an adult, about working through problems instead of running. I deleted it. By the end of that week, it was clear. This wasn't about heartbreak. It was about control slipping through his fingers, and him doing everything he could to grab it back. The worst part wasn't the lies. It was the silence that followed them. After the chaos settled into something quieter and more poisonous, the world around me shrank. Text threads went cold. Invitations stopped coming. People I used to see every week suddenly felt distant, careful, like they were afraid proximity meant choosing a side. I understood it intellectually, but emotionally it felt like erasure. At night, lying on my brother's couch, I replayed everything on a loop. Not just the conversation I overheard, but the years leading up to it. I dissected every moment, every smile, every excuse I'd accepted. I wondered how many people had known before I did, how many times I'd been the punchline in rooms I never entered. Some nights doubt crept in. What if I had overreacted? What if this really was just wedding stress, badly expressed? What if I'd destroyed something salvageable because I was too proud to forgive? Those thoughts hit hardest around 3 a.m, when exhaustion stripped away certainty and left only questions. I missed him. Not the man who called me pathetic, but the version of him I'd loved, the one who showed up when my car broke down, who proposed with shaking hands, who promised a future that felt safe. Grief is confusing like that. It doesn't respect logic. During the day, I functioned. I went to work. I answered emails. I laughed at the right moments. But underneath it all was a constant hum of anxiety, like my body was bracing for the next attack. And it came. A mutual friend pulled me aside one afternoon. I don't want to get involved, she said carefully, but people are talking. About what? I asked, already knowing. About you being controlling, about emotional abuse, about how he was scared to leave. The words landed heavy, ugly. I went home and stared at the wall for a long time after that. Was this what he'd meant by game on? I thought about defending myself publicly, about posting screenshots, about correcting the record. But every version of that felt wrong, loud, reactive, exactly what he wanted. Still, staying silent hurt. Somewhere in the middle of all that noise, I started questioning my instincts, wondering how I could have been so wrong about someone I planned to marry, wondering if trusting myself again was even possible. One night, I found the engagement ring in my bag. I'd forgotten I'd taken it. It sat heavy in my palm, catching the light in a way that used to make my chest flutter. Now it just felt like evidence of promises made casually, of commitment that only ran one direction. I cried then. Not dramatic sobs, quiet ones, the kind that leave you hollow afterward. I realized something in that moment. He hadn't just ended our relationship. He'd tried to rewrite my identity. He wanted me doubting myself, small, defensive, explaining, apologizing for having boundaries. And for a while, it was working. That realization scared me more than anything else, because if I let him control the narrative inside my own head, then walking away wouldn't mean anything. I'd still be stuck, just in a different place. That night, I didn't text anyone. I didn't check social media. I didn't rehearse arguments or draft explanations. I sat with the discomfort, with the grief, with the anger. And somewhere in that stillness, something shifted. Not strength yet, but resolve. I didn't need everyone to believe me. I needed to believe myself. And for the first time since I'd walked into that living room and heard the truth, I understood this wasn't just about ending an engagement. It was about deciding whether I would let someone who used me also define me. That was my darkest moment, but it was also the last moment I considered going back. The shift didn't happen all at once. It happened quietly, through paperwork, timestamps, receipts, and people who chose honesty over comfort. The first real crack in his narrative came from somewhere I hadn't expected. My phone rang one afternoon. It was his best friend again. "I wanted you to hear this from me," she said. "He's escalating." I closed my eyes. "How?" "He's telling people you financially controlled him, that you isolated him, that you were emotionally abusive." She paused. "He asked me to back it up. I refused." Something inside my chest loosened, not relief exactly, but confirmation. "I told him I wouldn't lie," she continued, "and I told him if he keeps pushing this story, it's going to come back on him." "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "Because it's wrong," she said simply, "and because I heard what he said about you. There's no version of that where he's the victim. After we hung up, I sat very still. For weeks, I'd felt like I was drowning in his version of events. Now, for the first time, I realized I wasn't alone in the room where the truth lived. The second shift came through structure. Lawyers have a way of draining drama out of chaos. They reduce emotions to facts, claims to evidence, fear to options. My attorney walked me through everything calmly: lease rights, property ownership, documentation. I stopped reacting and started recording. Dates, messages, emails, threats, patterns. Control doesn't like paper trails. Then came the call from my dad. "You're not in trouble," he said before I could speak, "but your ex tried to contact the firm." I felt my stomach drop. About what? "He wanted a consultation," my dad said dryly, "about his controlling ex who stole his property." There was a pause. The managing partner thought it was bold. I let out a breath that sounded half like a laugh. "They called me," my dad continued, "asked if they should proceed. I told them absolutely not, and then I called his father." That conversation apparently ended quickly. Something shifted after that. The messages slowed, the threats lost their edge, the confidence drained out of his tactics once they met, consequences he couldn't charm his way around. When we finally retrieved the rest of my belongings, I didn't go alone. My brother came with me, calm, solid, silent. His mother was there, bristling, defensive, ready for another confrontation. But this time, I didn't engage. I didn't argue. I packed. Furniture I'd purchased. Electronics in my name. Boxes labeled clearly, methodically. My lawyer's letter sat on the counter, visible. When my ex arrived, he looked startled. "You're really taking everything?" he asked. "I'm taking what's mine," I said. "The rest is yours." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. "How can you be so cold?" he asked. "We were supposed to get married." "We were," I said, "until I found out you were counting down the days to leave me." "Stop saying that," he snapped. "I wasn't planning to leave." "You said you were waiting for the right time," I said evenly. "This is just the time you didn't control." That was the moment I felt it. Not anger. Authority. I wasn't defending myself anymore. I was closing a chapter. In the parking lot, as my brother loaded the last box, my ex followed us, voice raised, desperate, sharp. "You're making a huge mistake," he shouted. "Everyone's going to see what kind of person you really are." I turned once. "I already know," I said, "and I'm okay with it." As we drove away, something settled in my chest. He could keep talking. The truth didn't need volume anymore. It had weight, and it was finally on my side. He didn't stop. He just changed strategies again. The first official consequence came in the form of a letter, a small claims filing, $8,000 for emotional distress and lost property value from furniture I'd taken. When my lawyer read it, he smiled. "This," he said, tapping the page, "is going to backfire." Court day arrived quietly. No drama, no spectacle, at least not on my side. I showed up with documentation, receipts, purchase records, photos, serial numbers, text messages where he demanded I remove my belongings. Everything labeled, dated, cross-referenced. He arrived with his mother and sister, dressed carefully, grief polished into something presentable. He looked smaller than I remembered, tighter, like the weight of maintaining a lie had finally caught up to him. In court, he told his story, about how I'd stolen furniture, about how we'd shared everything, about how I'd left him devastated and financially ruined. The judge listened patiently. Then my lawyer spoke. Evidence replaces performance quickly. The judge flipped through the receipts, compared dates, matched serial numbers. "Ma'am," the judge said to him, "this furniture was purchased by the defendant before your relationship began. You have no legal claim to it." "But we lived together," he protested. "We shared." "That does not transfer ownership," the judge said. "Case dismissed." Just like that. Outside the courthouse, his mother started in on me immediately. Accusations, insults, threats of karma. My lawyer stepped forward. "Any further harassment will result in a restraining order," he said calmly. "This is your warning." They left, but the real fallout came later. It started with the job opportunities he'd been quietly counting on. Remember the recommendation letters from my dad's firm? The introductions? The goodwill built on proximity to my family? Those didn't vanish dramatically. They were simply withdrawn. One afternoon, my dad's assistant accidentally CC'd the wrong email when responding to a colleague about references. The message explained, briefly, professionally, why the recommendation had been rescinded following a broken engagement involving dishonesty. Oops. 3 companies suddenly went in a different direction. The promotion he'd been waiting for, the one he wanted secured before leaving me, never came. His boss, a client of my dad's firm, called about something unrelated. Golf conversation. Small talk. My dad mentioned the engagement had ended and why. Nothing exaggerated. Just facts. He was moved to a different team. Not fired, but stalled. Contained. That's when he lost control completely. The calls started. New numbers, blocked numbers, borrowed phones, begging, screaming, threatening. You ruined my career. I didn't do anything, I said once, before blocking that number too. People ask questions. Answers have consequences. You sabotaged me, he yelled in a voicemail. No, I said to the empty room. You sabotaged yourself. He went to his father. His father tried calling mine again. That conversation was short. Your son tried to use my daughter while planning to leave her, my dad said. He played games. He lost. Tell him to move on. The lease situation resolved itself when reality finally arrived. He couldn't afford the apartment alone. I wasn't paying more than my half. We broke the lease early, split the termination fee evenly. He moved back in with his parents. I found a smaller place closer to work. We lost 38% of our wedding deposits. Split down the middle. It hurt my savings. Still worth it. The final message came weeks later from yet another new number. I hope you're happy. You destroyed my life. All because I had one moment of doubt. I stared at the screen for a long time before blocking it because I finally understood something. This wasn't a man processing loss. This was someone furious that manipulation had limits. The fallout wasn't revenge. It was gravity. And gravity doesn't need intention. It just pulls everything back where it belongs. It's been a few months now. Not enough time for everything to stop hurting, but enough time for the pain to change shape. The first weeks were the hardest. I second-guessed myself constantly, replayed that afternoon in the living room like a scene I could somehow rewrite if I watched it enough times. Every time doubt crept in, though, I remembered the laughter, the way he said my name like a joke, the way he talked about leaving me like it was a scheduling issue. That memory grounded me. I started therapy. My therapist asked if I had regrets. Ending it, I said. No. Anything else? Not seeing the signs sooner, I admitted. We talked about the distance, the excuses, the lack of affection I'd normalized. She said something that stuck with me. You didn't miss anything. You trusted someone who chose not to be honest. That mattered. My brother stayed close, didn't push, didn't analyze, just existed in the same space when I needed it. My mom tried setting me up with her friend's sons. I told her I wasn't ready. She smiled and said, You can't let one bad person ruin love for you. I'm not. I just needed to remember who I am without bending myself to fit someone else's comfort. One afternoon, I finally deleted the photos. 5 years gone in about 20 minutes. It felt strange, lighter than I expected, like clearing a room that had been cluttered for so long I'd forgotten what open space felt like. I found the engagement ring again. I didn't sell it. That felt petty. I mailed it back to his parents' house. No note. His mother texted me, unnecessarily cruel. I blocked that number too. The wedding date passed quietly. I noticed it. Then I moved on. I heard through mutual friends that he's dating someone new, a woman from his gym. I wish her well. Truly, she deserves honesty too. As for me, I'm rebuilding slowly, working out more, spending time with people who don't make me feel small, learning how to sit with myself without constantly explaining my worth. People expected revenge. I didn't need it. He wanted to use my family's connections. Those connections disappeared when the truth surfaced. He wanted to time his exit perfectly. He got his exit on my timeline instead. He played with manipulation. I played with facts. That's the difference. It still hurts sometimes, but it's honest pain, clean pain, instead of the slow rot of loving someone who was already planning to leave. The right time wasn't after the holidays. It wasn't after a promotion. It was that afternoon when I walked through my own door and heard the truth. Ending it right then was the hardest decision I've ever made, and the best one.